I do want to hear a little bit about how you got started with the Phillies. And these are stories I think they've been told in other stories because you've had a lot of things written about you and things like that. But for anyone who doesn't know your career as well, just tell us how you got started with the Phillies.
Well, from the time Steve, my father, first took my brother Rick and me to a Phillies game at Connie Mack Stadium, I fell in love with the Phillies. All that green grass at 21st and Lehigh, and the Valentine scoreboard, and the Longines flock on top. You know, the lights at night, you know, and just taking the subway up to Broad and Lehigh and walking those last 6 blocks to Connie Mack Stadium, which was bounded by 21st, 20th, Lehigh, and Allegheny. And I thought I was walking into heaven. I mean, I just loved it so much. I thought, wouldn't it be, would I love to be a major league player, of course. A lot of us kids have that dream at a young age. And then, realism sets in. As you go older, you realize that only a very small number of men have an opportunity to play at the major league level.
Right.
But I began thinking in terms of, God, I love it so much. I wonder if there's anything else that I could do that would give me the opportunity to come here on an everyday basis. And even at that young age, I'd look up at that press box and I'd say, boy, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a chance to work up there. Well, when I used to play baseball as a kid, a lot of times I would imitate Pete Byron, who was then the PA voice of the Phillies in the 50s and 60s, and the late great Dave Zinkoff, with the Philadelphia Warriors and later the Sixers.
I could still hear his voice. Absolutely.
Who I had a chance to fill in for once, and I thought, I can talk well. I really know sports. I love sports, and my brother and I used to collect baseball cards, and I memorized the backs of many of them, and retained some of that to this day. And of course, there's a lot I didn't retain, but it was something I began thinking in terms of, maybe there's another avenue. And I played a couple of years of JV basketball at Glassboro State College, now Rowan, suited varsity, but I wasn't about to jump from there to the NBA. So my last 2 years at Glassboro State, junior and senior, I got a job in the mailroom at WKBS TV, Channel 48 in Philadelphia.
I remember them.
When 48, 17, and 29, the UHF TV stations opened in like 66, 67, in that range. That's when those stations came on the air. And I was lucky enough to get a job in the mailroom. That's like low man on the totem.
Oh, yes.
But it was $1.50 an hour, 40 hours a week, $60. Was I in the high grade? But Steve, I made so many wonderful friends, contacts. I was introduced to people. I had a chance to do. I worked with Stu Nahan, first Captain Philadelphia, and the first TV voice of the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yes, and star of Rocky movies.
Let's
not forget that.
Right. It's funny. One time, somebody, I was honored by an organization, and I've been fortunate enough to be honored by a couple, and this in doing their bio, they said they correctly identified a number of things that I accomplished, but they also added a few that I didn't do, such as a star of Rocky movies. And I said, uh, I didn't. I wasn't in a Rocky movie.
I've seen them all, and I don't remember your voice.
No, I was. Stan Hockman was in.
Yeah, Rocky Five.
Yeah, and
Stan Hockman and Al Meltzer and a couple. Yeah, I remember that scene. Yeah.
So somebody said, "Well, what did you do in the Rocky movies?" People that had come to this dinner, this honors dinner that I was being acknowledged at, and I said, "You don't recognize me?" I said, "Well, listen, let me repeat one of the lines, and maybe." I said, "What are we waiting for?"
Burgess Meredith, perfect. Oh my God!
But I didn't do that. I mean, I have done, I think, quite a few noteworthy things, but that was not one. So anyway, getting back to how the Philly job came along. So in the late 1960s, besides working at Channel 48, I also worked a lot of baseball games, a lot of football games and basketball games as a statistician or spotter for visiting announcers. And then later for some of the network announcers. And it was like getting a graduate degree in sportscasting, sitting next to Jay Randolph from St. Louis and Jack Buck, Al Wester of WWL in New Orleans, who with the voice of the Saints, Rick Weaver of WIOD in Miami, the voice of the Dolphins. And again, I just tell them how many passes a quarterback threw, how many he completed, what was the total yardage, how many receptions each receiver had, how many yards each running back gained, those kind of things. First downs, number of passes thrown by a quarterback, number completed, all those things. And I became pretty good at that. And I actually worked the Super Bowl in New Orleans one year doing that, and worked a number of high-profile games. But of course, I was hoping to maybe one day be a sportscaster myself, and that came to be. But in the early 70s, Pat Cassidy, who was the press box steward at Franklin Field for the Eagles, had by now become director of operations, stadium operations for Bill Giles at the Vet. And he used to see me coming into the games. I mean, I would get like $15 a game. You didn't get a whole bunch. And I made sure that I got that box lunch too. That was my big meal for the day. But again, I met a lot of people. I learned a lot. I paid close attention, kept my eyes and ears open. This may all sound very commonsensical, but it can really help the learning process.
Absolutely.
So I was lucky along the way that a few people took a liking to me, and one of them was Mr. Cassidy, and he said, "Son, what do you eventually want to do?" Very father-like, And of course, I didn't need another father figure because I had a great one of my own. But I welcomed any help that somebody was willing to offer, and I said. I told him what I wanted to do. At that time, I was focused mainly, Steve, on play-by-play.
Right.
But he said, "Well, look, we just completed our first year at Veterans Stadium for the Phillies, and I think we're contemplating a change. Would you have any interest in being a public press announcer?" I said, "Oh my God, they'd give him my right arm." And he said, "Well, I think I can arrange an interview for you with my boss, Bill Giles."
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, Mr. Cassidy, you know, I couldn't thank you enough. And he said, here's my card. Give me a call next week, and I'll see what I can do. So I call him the following week, and he says, I got an interview for you. You have to call Bill's office and set it up, you know, with his secretary. But he will interview you for the job.
Mm.
And by this time, Steve, I had already sent out dozens, if not hundreds, of resumes, audition tapes, video and audio,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't hear back from most people that I applied to. And I applied to professional sports organizations, colleges, radio stations, TV stations,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the few responses that I did get were usually polite declines. You know,
Boy, this all sounds familiar.
we don't have any openings.
Right.
We'll keep your resume on file. And so, I mean, I wasn't getting close to any interviews yet.
Mm.
And so here was an interview being handed to me on a golden platter.
Mm-hmm.
So I interviewed with Bill Giles, who, as you know, came from a great baseball family.
Yes, Warren Giles, yes.
Had a wonderful reputation. And I knew this could be something special if I could make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think you did.
But you know, my mother and dad were sticklers for not only speech,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I really first learned to speak well. But you know, honesty, loyalty, integrity,
Mm-hmm.
you know, telling the truth, you know, and so I'd like to think that I represent those wonderful things that my mother taught me and father taught me. And so when I met with Bill, you know, now by that time I had announced 3 summers, 69, 70, and 71. I was teaching school during the school year.
Mm-hmm.
During the summers, a man named Buddy Wagner, who was the ring announcer for the WWWF,
Mm-hmm.
had an auto daredevil show. He hired me to do the announcing for that show on the road at different state and county fairs.
So you were doing wrestling?
I was the backup.
You were the backup,
announcer.
okay.
But he loved doing it, and he was a very colorful dresser and very good at it. And I learned a lot from him.
Did you ever actually get to do it? Or-
Yeah.
So you announced some wrestlers?
Oh yeah.
Anyone-
Bruno Sammartino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Gorilla Monsoon. The
Okay.
Fabulous Sicilians.
I need to hear what Dan Baker announcing Bruno Sammartino would sound like.
In this corner, here he is from Abruzzi, Italy. 6 feet. He weighs 265 pounds. In the green tights, the heavyweight champion of the world, Bruno Sammartino.
You repeated it, didn't you?
Yeah. And they would do the bell and be ding, and you know, be a crowd, and
It's an old wrestling fan in me.
Yeah.
I go way back with
so I did Johnny Rod, you know, names you wouldn't even have heard of.
that. I know Johnny Rods. Killer
uh,
Kowalski and
I didn't do Killer Cole.
No?
I did Arnold Skolin,
Arnold
the
Skolin.
Golden Boy.
Did you ever do Andre the Giant?
No.
Okay.
But he was just coming up when
That's
I
right.
was doing it, and I would like to, you know, announce it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had done that by this time, and because I did a good job at that, the main guy who never took a day off really appreciated the way I comported myself, and so he hired me to do the summer tour for them on these Auto Daredevil shows. So I played many of the New York State Fair in Syracuse, the Presque Isle Fair in Maine, the Skowhegan Fair, the Blue Hill Fair, the Augusta Fair, all these fairs. Same with the Massachusetts, Vermont, a bunch of them. And, I was pretty good at it. But that's not what I wanted to do. That was exciting and entertaining. I had already written letters to like Larry Schenk at the Phillies. Again, Larry responded very politely. I'm sorry, we have no openings. Geez, I would have been satisfied just to be a concessionaire at that point, to get into, first Connie Mack Stadium and later, the Vet. So anyway, so Bill Giles sets up the interview. Pat Cassidy sets up the interview for me with Bill Giles, and so Bill was going over my background. He could hear from talking with me that I had good elocution, and my parents were sticklers for pronouncing every syllable in a word and making good contact with people, looking at their face, looking at their eyes. And so I think he was happy with all of that. And then we talked a lot of baseball. And then, as now, Steve, I knew a lot of baseball. And I knew a lot of football. But I was a sports nut.
Right.
When a lot of my fellow students were concentrating on schoolwork, I was concentrating on baseball statistics and the like.
Well, that sounds familiar too.
Yeah, I was a pretty good student, but not an A student, straight A student. And so I think I sufficiently impressed Bill that I knew baseball. And from playing it a lot, and I kept a score. Well, wait, I'll get into really what sealed the deal for me. One of the reasons the Phillies were contemplating making a change, the man who preceded me was Art Wolf of KYW News Radio and Montgomery County newspapers.
Okay.
Art is a wonderful man, if you know him, and a wonderful voice. But as Bill Giles explained to me, the PA announcer for the Phillies was also responsible for operating the game in progress scoreboard. That is to say, the ball strikes outs, the line score, the runs, hits, errors. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do this, but you have to be extremely focused.
Right.
Well, as mundane as this may seem, I used to lay at bed at night listening to the Phillies Dodgers game. I would keep the ball stretched on my fingers, so I told Mr. Giles this, and I think he got a charge out of it. I said, oh, that's right up my alley. And I said, Mr. Giles, he said, we've been a little bit slow in that department. He said, that's an area we need to improve. And I said, well, Mr. Giles, if you hire me, I will be the quickest and most accurate in baseball. And Steve and viewers, for the 32 years that I ran the scoreboard at Veterans Stadium, as well as doing the public address announcer, I was the most accurate and the quickest scoreboard operator in the major league.
You didn't get the job necessarily because of your voice. You got the job because you could run the scoreboard and pay attention.
Yes.
And everything else just came along with it.
Yeah. Isn't it funny?
Wow.
So, and Steve, something that we all grew up doing, I think, not all of us, but many of us, back in the day, I would keep score of the games, and for the little league games that I would play in or other, and I would operate the scoreboard at the little league. Like we play in Mount Ethan, we play a doubleheader. My team would play, it might be a game at 6 o'clock, and then then there's a game that follows.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I played in the first game, I might run the scoreboard for the second game. And, they didn't pay you for it. I enjoyed doing it so much. And so this was second nature to me. And when I told Mr. Giles that I would be the quickest and most accurate in baseball, I could see him arch his back, and I could tell that this was just what he wanted to hear.
Wow.
Just what he needed to hear. And I really felt so good. Now, I have been in interviews where I didn't respond in the manner that the interviewer was looking, and that I didn't impress him or her. But this time, I think, thankfully, I hit all the right notes.
Yeah.
And Mr. Giles was pleased. And he told me at the end of the interview that, you're going to, oh, and he also took me upstairs to do an audition.
Yes.
To be heard over the PA mic throughout the vet. So, my goodness, at the time I was living in an apartment at 1901 Hart Ramp, which is just up the street from the vet. And Mr. Giles said, okay, we're going to hire you, but I don't want you to say anything yet. Because we haven't told our current PA announcer we're making a change. And I wouldn't want him to hear this from someone else.
Right.
Out of respect, I owe him that much. And I said, oh gosh, I understand. So at the time I was unmarried, when I walked back, because I was within walking distance of the vet, oh man, I felt like jumping up in the air and kicking my feet, like you see in the old time movies or something. And I was just so happy and so grateful. And then I guess he said, call me next week, and I'll let you know if I had a chance to talk to your predecessor. And I called him, and he said, yes, he had a chance to talk to him. You can, And the Phillies put out a little release. Well, actually, it was a release that had more to do with some of the personnel transactions for the roster. Mine was a little note, a very small note on a press release that really had more to do with what was going on with the club.
Wow.
But nevertheless,
So it's like we traded Rick Wise for Steve Carlton, and we got Dan Baker, something like that.
Well, that's right.
That's
Steve
72.
Carlton came the same year I did. That was also the first year for Kite Man.
Oh, yeah.
But
give me a second. I got to talk about Kite Man.
Okay.
I love Kite Man, but amazing story, by the way. I mean, the amount of detail you can recall is pretty amazing to me. I got to say that.
I've always had a pretty good memory.
Okay.
And there's, in God's wisdom, Steve, I believe that He endows all of us with a certain skill set. I don't think some of us ever quite know what our best skill set is. You may never get the opportunity.
Yeah. Sometimes you figure it out later too.
Yeah. So I think I, knew early on that I was a pretty good speaker. But I think there were other characteristics, concentration, focus. And when you love doing something, Steve, you'll put whatever amount of time it takes into it to get better at it and to learn.
Absolutely.
And
well, so I may test your memory a little bit on some of these.
Please.
But the way I wanted to approach this was, I'll get a chance to say this to you. I've said some things like this to you before. I mean, you've been there all my life. I mean, you've been the soundtrack of my Phillies games.
Oh,
so, and as a guy who, I was in radio for a long time, I've done some PA announcing too. I grew up trying to imitate Harry Callis. And I wanted to be Harry Callis. Of course, he would never give up the job. So, but I never wanted him to because he's Harry Callis. And on some level, I wanted to be Dan Baker too, but he would never give up the job. And man, I hope you never do. I don't want, you can't imagine. There will be a day, but I don't want to imagine a Phillies game without Dan
Well,
Baker.
Steve, I'm in the midst of completing my 52nd
Yes.
full season, and there are only 2 PA announcers with more seniority than me. Pat Piper with 59 years for the Cubs, Bob Shepard 57 years for the Yankees.
Voice of God.
Yes, oh, he was wonderful. I went up to observe him as a young PA announcer myself to learn from the best. And so if my health holds out and if I can still perform at a high level, and the Phillies will have me for 8 more years, that would give me 60 years, and then I would have more longevity in this role than anybody in the history of Major League Baseball public address announcing.
We're rooting for you. I'm rooting
thank
for
you.
you.
So I'm going to give it a try. I'm 77. I'll be 78 later this month, 22nd.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty good. Again, a wonderful family support.
And say, I know you've been through a lot of health stuff in the past few years, and you're coming through that.
I am.
Good.
Once you have cancer, that's something basically that you treat for the rest of your life. Not that I don't think I have any more cancer at this point, but you have to get checked.
Yes.
Every 6 months or so.
I'm a survivor. I know about this.
Just to make sure it doesn't come back.
Yes.
And so I'm going to do what's necessary and
good.
Hope it works out.
All right. Well, so here's how I want to go through this next part, because I wanted to tell you, some of my personal memories of you, and see if you can recall the time and what I may be talking about. Because my first game was 1978. It was Mother's Day, and I'm not going to ask you to recall every detail because I don't even recall every detail. But I remember my mom got tickets for Mother's Day and decided to take me to the game. And I remember one of the first things. I was 6 years old.
2-1, 10 innings.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
I looked it up today, and it actually wasn't, but nice try. So Mother's Day, 1978, and here's one of the first things I remember. Leading up to the game, I watched them on TV and heard all of it, and one of the first things I actually remember was hearing your voice and going, "That's not Harry Callis. Why am I not hearing Harry Callis? I think as a 6-year-old I'm going to hear Harry Callis at the game," but no, it was this other guy. It was Dan Baker. So you did throw a little shock into a 6-year-old me, but
okay.
Now I'll tell you what I remember most about the game. For the record, Larry Christensen was the pitcher against the Reds. I know you have a great affinity for the big red machine.
Yeah.
Sure.
Not more than the Phillies.
Yeah, of course. But
number 38, Larry Christensen.
Yes, sir. And he pitched. The starting pitcher was Tom Hume, and Phillies won that game 7-4. Turns out. Now here's why I remember. I didn't remember these details. I had to go back and look them up because I was 6. I didn't remember that. But what I remember was that was the year that they were transitioning from the Philly Fanatic to the Philly Fanatic from Phil and Phyllis. But they still had the home run spectacle. Remember the home run spectacle in center field, the cannon, the bell, all of that. So they didn't warn me.
Fountains.
Yeah, did they have the fountains in 78? I think they got rid of those.
They may have been gone by then.
Okay, but they still had that. What I remember, they didn't warn me about this. I'm a 6-year-old kid, and the Phillies hit 3 home runs that day, and the first one was by Mike Schmidt. I looked that up. And, all right, so home run by Mike Schmidt, yay, everyone's going nuts, and the home run spectacle goes off, and I had no idea that there was a boom at the end. That cannon, when the cannon goes, there used to be, and it was loud.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know it was coming. I got scared out of my mind. I thought the Russians were attacking the vet, like we were getting bombed. It's like, so I spent half of that game just in jitters. If they hit 2 more home runs that day and I knew it was coming, I would panic. Do you think other kids were panicking like I was?
Well, sure. I mean, a real loud noise or
Yeah.
a sudden anything can, you know,
What was Bill? I
shake
mean,
you.
and I know that Bill Giles put that up there. It's like, what was he thinking with the boom at the end? Do you have any insight there?
Just create tension.
Yeah.
You know, and he sure did that.
He did a lot of that.
God, I remember the great Merrifield who hung suspended from a helicopter on a trapeze, and the great Melinda who walked across the
Yeah, I've heard so many stories
top
about
of
the
Veterans Stadium.
Carl Walenda walk.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. You had to announce that. And
Yeah.
You had to say something. And,
Yeah.
And any recollections from that day, or just?
I can remember our organist Paul Richardson. You know, is I got another funny story to tell you about that too. Paul Richardson playing "You'll Never Walk Alone."
Oh my
Walk
God!
on, walk on, with hope in your heart. And it was a lot of. I mean, this was a unique thing.
Yeah, people
Having
were
Melinda walk
watching
across
this.
the top of the stadium.
People were scared that day,
Yeah,
weren't they?
yeah. I mean, it was, everybody was focused on this, and you just hoped nothing would happen. You couldn't get hurt,
Mm-hmm.
But I remember Bill John, one of the Phillies team doctors at the time, later did some surgery on my wife.
Mm-hmm.
But that day, Bill was so concerned because it was, oh my gosh, it got headlines all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
Among sporting events. I mean, this was spectacular, for heaven's sakes. And it helped us, sell out or get a huge crowd. You could get as much as, 60,000 people at the vet. I lost my train of thought.
The 60,000 people at the vet, and
well, anyway, Bill Giles goes to this doctor. I think his last name was Fox, but he said, "Doctor, I wasn't around. I didn't hear this. I heard this from Dr. Fox." And Bill said, "Doctor," he took him down in the field. He said, "I want you to be down here in case anything happens with him."
oh my God!
You
You'd be down there on the field, and
and
what's he going to do with that point?
that's my whole point, Steve. Dr. Fox says to Bill, and by the way, happy birthday to Bill Jones.
Yes.
Who just turned 90 yesterday. So Dr. Fox says, Bill, he falls, you got to do something. We can't let anything happen. He said, Bill, if he falls from that height, the only thing we're going to need is a shovel.
No.
It's kind of thing you laugh about now.
Yeah, well,
it is something to laugh about. It, but Bill was a great impresario, and I mean, they were concerned because if there was an accident, I mean, it could have been tragic.
And I'm going to go because you mentioned Kite Man, and there is a long history with Kite Man. And the reason why I wanted to separate Kite Man is that's another one of my memories of you. The first game that I have really, I went to a couple of games when I was younger and I don't remember them, but the first game I have memories of what happened on the field was opening day of 1980. It was my third game. My mom got tickets, and opening day of 1980, one of the big reasons I remember it is because it's against the Expos, Steve Carlton versus Steve Rogers, and Greg Luzinski hit a 3-run shot in the first inning. It was the beginning of my love affair with the ball, who was one of my earliest baseball idols. And, that's one of the big things I remember. The other thing I remember is I was sitting in center field in the 600 level. And when I got there, I looked over and it's like, there's this big long ramp in the row next to me. And I'm like, I don't know what this is. I guess we're going to find out in a little bit. And that's when I remember you came on before the game and you mentioned something about we had Kite Man 1. It's like, did he make it? And everyone went, no. I'm like, okay, this is something. The Kite Man 2, did he make it? He said, no, you built it up. And they said, ladies and gentlemen, and I look over and this guy on a kite's next to me. I was like, we have Kite Man 3! And like, oh my God, this is big. And he actually looked over at me and waved and before he popped open the smoke. And then he went down. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And he actually sort of made it. He made it into center field.
Yeah.
Do you remember that intro?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I heard it. It's like, and I've seen the footage of the first two. The first guy crashed in the middle of the, like right when he took off.
Still in the upper deck. He didn't make it out of the upper deck.
He didn't make it out of the upper deck. Kite Man 2, what had he... Was it 1 or 2 that crashed in the upper deck? I think one. Yeah.
Two might have been... He went straight down, and either behind the center field...
He went behind the wall or something.
Or just in the front of it. Nowhere near home plate.
Yeah.
But he tried.
And how do you react when that goes? You have to say something.
Yeah.
What do you say? Do you remember what you said, or did you just kind of go, oh?
Yeah. Well, let me preface that by saying this. The man who helped Bill Giles get some of these great circus acts like Kite Man, Melinda,
The Human Bomb,
Benny Koski, the Human Bomb. He, like Buddy Wagner, the great ring announcer who owned this Auto Daredevil show, would coach me on building up the momentum towards like a circus act or a spectacular event, and they said you can put drama in there and really make it seem important. It's like a salesman, Steve. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't tell anybody about it, it doesn't seem like a big deal. So I said, okay. So I tried to build it up, and I might have said something like, "Ladies and gentlemen, let's be mindful. This is a very dangerous event, and one could get injured falling from that height." So I tried to I think I tempered them a little bit, and I hoped that I played a role in maybe turning any disappointment that he didn't make it to the point that let's be happy, that he didn't get killed.
He's okay,
and you don't want to be blunt or crude,
right,
or say something that in any way minimizes the danger that's involved. So I tried to build up to that crescendo, and then when he wasn't able to accomplish, and that was another thing Bill Hall taught me. He said, Dan, don't say they're going to do it. Say they're going to attempt to do it.
Yes, that's
you see.
You're not writing a check they might not be able to cash.
Yeah. So that's what I did. It takes a lot of courage, ladies and gentlemen. But he's going to try. We've tried this a couple of times before with different artists. I forget what I called them at the time. Wasn't acrobats or anything like that, but maybe artists. Let's just say
daredevils or
and please know that this is a rare feat that few have accomplished, or that no one has accomplished. And
in Walenda's case,
maybe, and I'm talking about Kite Man. Maybe if we're lucky, this will be the first time it happens, and you'll see.
Yeah, and I did.
And people are like, "Whoa, I'm really getting into this," you know.
And there's an 8-year-old in center field right next to Kite Man that has this burned in his memory almost 50 years later.
Yeah.
So, hey.
Well, thank you. So I did the best that I could, and that, by the way, is another thing, Steve, that helped me in my interview with Bill, because we were going over my background, what I had done so far in terms of sportscasting, sports announcing. Well, I was doing this little radio show in Atlantic City. You know, it was a football-related show, and an NFL report with John Struckle, the president and general manager out of Emerson.
Okay.
So, but there wasn't a whole lot that I did. But in doing these Order Daredevil events, you know, like our show was the lead-in show to Evel Knievel one time. I mean, you know, so I knew what it took and all the elements involved in trying to sell one of these spectacles. Now, Bill put on a lot of spectacles.
Yes, he did.
So
that was what he's known for.
And now he had the guy to help sell him a little bit.
Are those some of your favorite memories, the selling those spectacles? I mean, besides you were there for World Series championships.
Yeah,
I know those are the top, but
yeah.
like getting to do that.
Yes, that was. I enjoyed it a lot, and you know, if I'm not being too egotistical, I think it's something that I'm pretty good at, and I can help point out the danger in it, what we're trying to do here, and I think I have a certain excitement in my voice that can elevate and make people maybe sit up and pay attention and say, "Wow,
yeah,
I didn't realize this is a big deal," you know. And, so yes, I remember those things vividly.
Good. Well, and I'll tell you, the best compliment I can pay is that I remember a game in 1981 where, for some reason, you weren't there. And I guess you occasionally needed a game off.
Well, occasionally, I didn't miss many games.
No, I know you did.
I probably, over the years have missed maybe 30 games total out of 52 years.
We're not going to count 2020 because I know you didn't do it then, and that was COVID.
Yeah. But and it was only 30 games that year. It was
That's right.
short.
Yeah.
I never liked to miss a game.
Of
but
course.
I was also doing the play-by-play for Temple football and Penn football from 1977 through about 1988. I did Temple football for 7 years and Penn football for 3 years.
Well, I remember this was Easter Sunday '81, and we had gotten tickets to the game, and we went to the game, and I remember hearing a different voice. I could be mixing. I know it was one of those.
It wasn't the highest jumping Easter bunny, was it?
No, I don't. I would have remembered that. Well, no, I remember hearing. I may have been mixing it up. It was in that era, or it might have been '82. I don't know.
See, usually the only games I missed. I missed 1 or 2 games when my father passed away and when my father-in-law passed away. I missed a game, I think, when my children graduated from high school. And
that would have been later. This would have been early '80s, '81. I think 81.
Yeah, well, the college football that I did on the radio for Temple and Penn went from like 77 to about 88.
Yeah, but this would have been April, so that wouldn't have been football season.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you why
usually I didn't miss it.
Yeah.
Well, then it might have been a death in the family.
Yeah, but I just remember hearing this other guy, and why I remembered, he had a unique way of saying Pete Rose. I think I can imitate it. It was Pete Rose. And it's like,
Yeah,
That's not Dan Baker. I didn't know your name at the time, but I was like, that's not the voice. Would you know who that would have been, by any chance? I mean, who would have filled in for you back in that day?
The few times that, the few times that I ever missed, Chris Wheeler filled in a couple of times.
I wonder if it was him.
Glenn Wilson actually filled in and did one.
What, the player?
The one that I just gave you the autograph
Oh yeah,
for.
Glenbow did one once. What? Wow. Okay, I know.
Tug McGraw did one once, and Mitch Williams did one once.
Oh my God.
And let's see, Mark Carfagno, who was a member of the Phillies grounds crew, who was the initial PA announcer for the Carpenter Cup. Now I do, most of the games, have been for many years. But I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I'm just.
Well, Scott Palmer.
Scott Palmer now, yeah.
Brilliantly during the pandemic year.
Yes.
2020.
And I think I heard him occasionally when you had a doctor's appointment for your conditions. Yeah, because I would hear him there.
That's about it.
Yeah, it's like, just remember, I was jarring to you would now become so synonymous with going to games that it was jarring to me to hear a different voice, and I picked up on it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We get we get conditioned to certain things and sights and sounds and voices and I guess develop a certain comfort level.
Absolutely.
And so if something changes, it can disrupt you.
Oh, sure. It's like you notice something. And I think the follow-up question I have to this, those are just some of my memories of you, and like, how you must get this a lot, obviously. I mean, how many times a week do people come up to you and just say, you were such a part of my life, or part of my childhood?
Well, Steve, it's very touching. It's been touching to hear you say that. I have had a number of, it doesn't happen every day, it doesn't happen every week, because I think sometimes people feel funny about saying that even. But for those who were brave enough to share that experience, as I say, it's very meaningful to me. I'm very proud, and I hope that the impression that I made was a positive one. I'm very gratified when somebody says something like that, and now I think, especially since my illness, and now that I'm about to complete my 52nd year, and that's rare for somebody to last that long. I think people know that I give it my all. I mean, I give everything I have. Even I'll have Philly security and ushers and usherettes come up to me and say, I really appreciate it, even when we're losing late in the game, now batting Mickey Morandini. I said, well, of course, I'm not going to give up.
No.
Could be a game like today.
I'll do 10 to 1, yeah.
I don't want those players to think for a minute that the Phillies organization or our fans are giving up.
Right. No, this brings up another memory. So 1993, I was in the stands for the doubleheader that went till 4 a.m. Yeah, and I sat through that rain delay and sat through the first game, and we're in the stands like, are they really going to play the second game? And you came on and said, the next game will begin at 1:20. Like, really? Now, I made it to 3:20, 3:30. All right, I was with a couple of my friends, and I'm literally falling asleep in the stands, and I had to drive us home. So I'm saying to my friends, like, guys, I can't do it. and I'll tell you, we drove home, and my friend's trying to keep me awake on 95, trying to get back to Delco, and I get back home, and I turned it on, and I heard Mitch Williams on the radio, and I heard that call from Harry live.
Yeah.
To this day, my friend will not let me live this down. Will not let me live it down. I'm like, John, if John, maybe he's watching, is like, if we'd have gotten home at 4 o'clock, I might have gotten into an accident and driven off the bridge. So how did you, I obviously didn't hear, but how did you maintain that energy at 4 in the morning?
Well, again, I am just energized by being in that ballpark.
Yeah, okay.
It's uplifting to me, emotionally, mentally, physically.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just enlivened, and I enjoy it so much. And I try to give. I never want to give less than my best performance.
Well, now you remember that night. You have to remember that night. Were you thinking, "My God, they can't play another game, can they?" Did you have doubts at that night?
Yes. Those of us in the scoreboard room, were wondering. I wonder what we'll do. Because I think there was a rule.
There was a local curfew, or
in Major League Baseball at one time, you can't start an inning like after 12 midnight. So here we are.
Excuse me.
120.
Yeah. So who made the call? Do you remember?
I would guess Dave Montgomery. I would guess.
So just somebody came up to you and said, "We're going to start at 120," and you just went with it.
Oh well, no, I wasn't the boss in that room. I'm just taking orders.
But you got the order from someone. Did you get it? Did you know?
It might have been. I'm trying to think whether Chris Wheeler was working in there with us at that time, or he was doing TV or radio.
Somebody had to come over and say, "Yeah, we're going to do a second game."
Yeah. Now, I forget who that might have been, but I think I took. Trying to think who would have been in the room with me at that time. Could have been. What year did you say this?
1993. This was the 93 year.
Yeah. Might have been Chris.
Okay.
Somebody, Larry Schenker, somebody might have phoned Chris Wheeler, and it might have been Chris in the room with me and said, "Yeah, we're going to go with it."
So it was, maybe not. I'm thinking there's a story. Yeah, we're going to do the second game, and everyone looking back on what? Not that climactic.
Yeah, are you kidding? No.
I'm gonna mention one other personal story, because I know when we got back to the World Series in 2022, and I got to know you, and I knew about your health conditions, through seeing you at the radio show, and I went to a few postseason games that year, and I remember being there. I think during the Atlanta series, I had my son with me, and I remember hearing you and going to myself, the fact that Dan has another postseason at this stage, after all he's been through, and after 50 years, and I heard that joy in your voice in the beginning. And then later on, I got to my first World Series game that year, finally, in my life. I had never been to the World Series, but I got to one in 2022, and again, hearing your voice in the beginning, and I knew what that was like for me, knowing what you had been through and how that touched me. But what was it like for you? I mean, can you describe that emotion?
Well, it was, here we are again. It doesn't get old.
No, I bet not.
80, 83, 93, 08, 09.
Yeah.
Here's number 6. Phillies have only been to 8.
Right.
The only ones I didn't do were 1915.
1950.
1950, when I was 4 years old.
Was there ever a point that you thought, I may never get to see this again? Or did you always maintain hope? I mean, you're a hopeful guy.
Yeah, I would say I always made. I never thought, well, I may never do this again or that again. I try not to look at it that way. I try to think, there is going to be another chance. Like I don't doubt for a moment that in the time that God allows me, that I'm going to see the Phillies win another World Series.
I hope so.
And
I hope it's this year.
And frankly, I think it's going to be multiple World Series.
That's optimistic.
Look how competitive. I think, Steve, we may be entering, or we may have already entered I think, maybe the third golden period of Phillies baseball. The first, of course, mid 70s to the early 80s. Schmidt, Luzinski, Carlton, Boa.
That was the era I fell in love with the team.
Yeah, and then the second era, which may have even been better than the first.
I think it was.
Jimmy Rollins, Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Cole Hamels.
My batting coach in fantasy camp, Charlie Manuel.
Oh
Yes.
man, what a job he did!
Oh.
Only manager in Phillies history to take us to back-to-back World Series.
Mm-hmm.
So can it happen? Well, I'm never going to give up trying. I'll tell you that. That's what I'm saying. I'm proud when the guards tell me, like, you don't give up. No, I'm not. And I don't ever want the team to think that I gave up or the fans gave up. And if we're there for a purpose. That purpose is to win. And let's us get behind the team and do whatever we can to encourage them.
This is a random question I just thought of. Are any of the current players, do they ever tell you how much they enjoy hearing you? Or maybe even some past players, yeah.
I remember when Jason Worth came back with Washington, and now he's a member of the Nationals. And he said, I miss hearing your voice introduce me.
Okay, yeah.
I felt so highly complimented. And I remember way back, remember second baseman Ted Sizemore?
Yes.
That was one of my favorite names to say. I only had a chance to do that for a couple of years. And he was a good number 2 hitter. But I used to, now batting for the Phillies, I think he was number 6. I don't remember for sure.
I believe he was, yeah.
Number 6, second baseman Ted Sizemore. Anyway, he came back as a representative of Rawlings to present like the Gold Gloves.
Oh, okay.
This is like.
So he had retired, I think, after the Phillies, yeah.
10 or 15 years after his playing days.
Oh, that. Oh,
and
okay.
And Ted said, "I would love to hear you announce my name one more time." I said, "Ted, you will hear it today."
Nice.
And I gave that to him.
That's what you gave, like Jason Worth when he came back. Did you give him at least the first at bat? Give him the old, give him a little oomph.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, because I know you did it for Chase Utley.
Yeah,
you have to do it for a guy like that.
Did it for Jimmy Rollins.
Yes.
When he came back, and also with the Dodgers, I guess it was.
Yeah, it was.
And Carlos Ruiz when he came back for like Seattle or something, and another guy who really appreciated, gave me a big hug after I did it when he came back again with Pittsburgh, Andrew McCutcheon.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I think the players appreciate it. They know that I take great pride in it, and I try to mix in some kind of a combination of affection, appreciation, encouragement. You're one of ours, all of those things, but all positive, positive energy.
Yeah. So, you've given us a lot today. It's a ton of stories, a ton of your positive energy, your wife, and.
Oh, my wife! As I say, what an asset.
Yeah.
and I don't know if I would have made it through all the medical stuff without her. I think she came to the hospital every day for 6 weeks.
Wow.
After I had my 24-hour surgery, and I've gone crazy in the hospital. It's just. It doesn't make me unique. Everybody feels. You can't sleep.
Yeah. You can't sleep in hospitals. They don't let you sleep.
There's noises. The poking, the prodding, the blood. This. Something, give me a shot in the stomach so you don't develop blood clots. And my recovery really picked up steam after I got home. In these familiar surroundings. I used to come out here on this deck and walk around like 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's very small.
Yeah.
But just being here, it really advanced my recovery. I just was feeling better about things, and I mean, I was always optimistic that I'm going to come back. I didn't allow for, a bad ending, and so, I have a lot to be thankful for. Is the truth.
Absolutely. Well, we're thankful you're still here. We're thankful you get to that 60 years. I want to be at the Dan Baker 60
Thank you.
party at Citizens Bank Park.
Yeah. Well, I guess if I get that far, we'll have one.
Yes, we will.
I hope we do.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. Okay, Steve. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for watching.